So where are we now? And where do we go from now? And is it hypocritical of me to support Vladimir Putin and his intervention in Syria, but denounce Saudi Arabia and their intervention in Yemen? I was in a debate with an Israel supporter recently on Facebook, and in defense of Israel, he mentioned, what about what Saudi Arabia are doing in Yemen? And what about what is happening in Burma or Myanmar? And it was funny that he mentioned those two, because the government in Burma is being backed, and even their military being trained and receiving weapons from Israel. And of course, Saudi Arabia are an ally of Israel. And his rebuttal to me was, it's not that simple. And I responded with, yes, it is. And he said, not allies officially. Well, who are your allies officially? Whether it's over the table or under the table, Britain, America, Saudi Arabia, and Israel are on the side together in this. They are on the same side. And it's very naive to say, well, my enemy's enemy is my friend. That's how you end up in bed with Al-Qaeda. And that is what is going on in Syria. That's part of the problem in Syria. But for someone like me, who witnessed Iraq be destroyed by Britain and America, I watched these events unfold in my teens and my 20s, and it's made me very likely to say, whichever side Britain and America are on, I'm on the other side. Which side is Saudi Arabia on? I'm on the other side. But it gets murky because there is infighting, and you look at the Gulf states who are also involved in this. I know Saudi Arabia is getting all the blame for what is happening in Yemen, but you look deeper, there are other Gulf states involved. Emirates are also backing the onslaught on Yemen. However, former friend of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, are now turned enemy. They have fallen out, and recently there was demands made on Qatar for Al Jazeera, their television station, to be closed down. So Qatar are not on the side of Saudi Arabia and are perhaps an unlikely rebel ally, as in they could be not openly but tacitly supporting the Houthi rebels, and therefore be, in terms of the proxy war, an unlikely friend of Iran. So your enemy's enemy is your friend, and all these factions vying for power in the Middle East are conducting various proxy wars. One of them is going on in Syria, and the struggle for power and the attempt to oust Bashar al-Assad in Syria's version of the Arab Spring, which actually began with demands for economic reforms in Daraa, in the south of the country, but ended up becoming an Islamist revolution. And the factions opposing Bashar al-Assad now are undoubtedly Islamic fundamentalists: Jabhat al-Nusra, Jaish al-Fateh, of course, Islamic State. And many people have accused Bashar al-Assad of releasing Islamic fundamentalists from prison during the uprising, knowing that they would join in and attack him, and he would be able to tell the world, look, I am being attacked by Islamic fundamentalists. I am up against Al-Qaeda, who are you going to back? I mean, if Al-Qaeda is your enemy, it's kind of easy to make yourself look good. And it must be difficult for the West. It must be difficult for them to portray Bashar al-Assad as a villain because he's a clean-shaven, light-skinned, suit-wearing, blue-eyed doctor who was educated in the UK and married a British Syrian woman who sadly has recently developed breast cancer, apparently. So you've got the Syria situation, you've got the Yemen situation, and the Houthi rebels, who are this Shia group from the Zaydi sect of Islam. The Zaydis, who, by the way, are, of all the Shia, the closest to the Sunni Muslims in terms of doctrine. But as this is being portrayed as a sectarian conflict, and people are accusing Iran of backing the Houthi rebels, it becomes a sectarian conflict. I don't think that the sectarianism was a cause of the war in this situation, but it would appear to be a consequence of it. And Saudi Arabia, it's clear when you look at their interventions that their sectarian agenda is guiding them in the way that they intervene, because the Arab Spring occurs and starts spreading across the Arab world, and Saudi Arabia back the rebels in Syria because Syria is an Arab republic, a majority Sunni Muslim country. However, the president and his father before him are members of the Alawite Shia sect, another small sect within Shia Islam, that Alawis, although he's an Arab nationalist and a secularist, and that's the bottom line. I think religious Sunni Muslims in Syria felt that they couldn't practice their religion openly and they would be marginalized, and men with beards were looked upon with suspicion. Women could not wear the Islamic dress, the hijab, in government buildings. It was a very enforced form of secularism. And when you suppress religion, people come back even more religious. Look what happened in Iran when a secular dictator enforced secularism for a couple of decades. The Shah, under the Shah's Shah Reza, the Pahlavi dynasty, under his rule, women were having their headscarves ripped off their heads in the street by the bayonets of his Savak, the secret police, who were trained by the Israeli Mossad, by the way. And lo and behold, in 1979, when he left, what took his place was the Islamic Revolution, and now women are forcibly told to cover up in Iran. So you go from being forced to uncover to being forced to cover. And in Syria at the moment, the president is of the mindset of a secular Arab nationalist. He is not into religion taking any part in terms of ruling the country. And for that reason, I think he's widely regarded to be supported by all the religious minorities, given that he is a minority himself. And I would guess the 10% Christian population of Syria would fear an Islamist takeover if the Arab Spring was successful in Syria. So, going back to Yemen, the Houthi rebels who murdered their former enemy, come ally, become enemy again, Ali Saleh, who are vying for power in the country, who are backed to a certain extent by Iran and various other factions, are under onslaught from Saudi Arabia with weapons sold to them by our Prime Minister, Theresa May. From America also, US tax dollars are the main funder of this carnage in Yemen. And it's heartbreaking to watch it happen. I think it's time that we protest outside the Saudi Arabian embassy. I really think it is. And we can't be hypocrites, and we can't sweep it under the rug, because the Zionists will tell you, and they are right, when they say, what about Saudi Arabia? And sadly, very sadly, the Palestinians have suffered at the hands of Arab governments almost as much as they have suffered at the hands of the Israeli government, the various Israeli governments over the years. Look at what happened in Jordan and Black September. Look how the Palestinians were dealt with by their own so-called Muslim brothers. And Arab Muslims again are being murdered by another Arab regime. The Saudis are killing the Yemenis. 29 children on a bus.